Geology department is one of the departments that likes to do these regularly, which is great. And the fact that what you can't see is we're in Hillcrest. I don't know if that building was done. Yeah. And they've got the technology in here. They've got a front and a rear camera that supposedly tracks. And yeah, there we go. It just moved.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And these 4 amazing mics here. So that we can see you guys really well on the screen. We can hear you really well. It's almost like you're in the room. Ideally, I'm going to manage the cameras if they don't move themselves so that you can see who's talking to you. You know, up front when they're asking the questions, and then when the students are asking the questions to go. So anyway, so it's great. It's a great place to do a hybrid kind of panel like this. Yeah. Oh, see, there we go. It's tracking. Yay.
Awesome.
Anyway, so yeah. I'm glad
I couldn't make it in person. I know it's like such a great time of year up there. You're kind of after mud season, right? And now you're actually starting to get some green, sort of.
Yeah. Yes. The golf course is going to open tomorrow, I think.
Nice.
They're hoping to anyway. So yeah, that's exactly it. It's a little past mud season, not quite nice weather, but getting there.
Yep.
So yeah. Anyway, I see Will coming in. And we have, I think I said in the email to you, we have one of the panelists who is here. The rest of you will be online, and that's great. It's fine. However it works, I know faculty will be sitting in. Hope they're all showing up now.
Figured out here. Yeah.
Yay, you found one. Hi, Will.
Hi, Amy.
How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. We've got Emily.
Hi, Emily.
Hi.
Where's the camera?
So watch this. Keep talking, and you'll see how the cameras are going to track.
Hi, Emily. It's me, Will.
It should track
nice to
you.
meet you.
Can you see me? I don't know. Maybe I'm in a weird spot. Maybe I should just be in the front of.
It takes a little bit. Well, and
Wow.
Oh, now it's
Oh,
yeah.
there we go.
Oh, okay.
There they are. See?
Yeah. Hi.
Yep. It tracked you.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Yeah. Happy. I was saying to Amy, think it didn't work out last year, but really happy to make sure it works out this year.
It's so great. Yeah. Thank you.
So yes, wherever you are, we can track you if you ask a question, but we still don't want you in the back.
Where you at?
So I mean, this is how I set it up, but you guys feel free to change it if you and Robyn want to be in front of it.
Sorry about the late email about the meeting.
No problem. No problem. I wasn't sure if it was probably already. You probably uploaded it already.
Yeah, I did. I just sent you an email about it. I can still edit it, but I'm really proud of it. So
Awesome. Sweet. Can't wait.
I'm pretty confident.
I have to check the schedule and figure out what time.
Oh, mine is at 4:30.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yep.
I should still be around.
Yeah.
That is late in the day though.
Yeah, mine is like one of the last ones.
Especially tomorrow, we have lots of space. Several people are not in.
Hi, Amanda. How'd it go?
So, I mean, this is just what I had for suggestion, just to have the two of you guys up front. And what I just kind of gave up. And I'm getting better. I can't say I'm like really good, but where I switch the cameras, like you can see. And then I've just switched it, so now the rear camera's on.
All right.
And so it would hone in on you guys.
Okay.
See how that is? Whoops, it's a little too much. Anyway, so during the panel, I might leave it like this.
I see.
And then when we do Q&A, I'll switch to the front
Got
camera
it.
like that. And
Exciting.
so we can see who's asking questions.
I have not experienced this.
It's cool.
Pretty wild.
That's why we're in here, because it's such good technology for a hybrid panel like this. It's great. And I'm getting that. You guys are lucky that this is my 8th one in here, so I'm getting better at this. Because you would have gotten a little dizzy before. Anyway, okay, so now I'm going to take us off so we can see people's faces. And we'll wait a few minutes. And then I have a quick announcement before you pick it up, yeah?
Perfect.
Okay, great, cool. And we'll see how many of the 19 was how many we got
Nice.
to by the time I last checked this afternoon, yeah.
I promised Amy 20.
Exactly. So I hope no one took it, we were glad that the rain started. I was glad no one was all of a sudden gonna take off on a bike or something because the weather was so good.
I really don't.
I would have been tempted to, so.
You don't wanna know?
That's gonna be, yeah.
What do you mean?
Tomorrow looks like today.
Yeah,
What if it's good?
exactly.
Very
Anybody
exciting.
participating online, do you know?
Don't know.
I didn't
That's fine.
offer the online option to anybody because I wanted to
Yeah.
all be here,
Yes,
but they may have found it on Handshake, so I don't know.
it was not, the only way I would have gotten it is if from the
Okay.
one I sent you.
Okay. then
We were not
probably-
making it available on Handshake for that very reason.
We're all together.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably no one.
even though
else.
we're in masks. Exactly.
We have, oh, good, there's Chris.
Yep.
There's Cailey. All right.
Everybody's on.
Hi, guys. Good to see you.
Let me just check that they're seeing. Right there.
There's Luis.
That's there you go.
We're here to talk about the future.
Which is not as scary as you think. That's the whole idea.
We brought people here who can actually give you advice, who have been gainfully employed, unlike your professors.
Made that transition, yeah.
Real insight into the real world.
Oh, I have a sign-in sheet. Where'd it go? Is it going around? Oh, thank you. I didn't even need to ask. Nice. Thank you. I usually have a colleague from CCI, the advisor who's sort of the closest liaison of the part. In this case, it would have been Tracy Himalisham. But she is away this week, so she would have taken care of that and been here, but has anyone met with Tracy before? Yeah.
She's awesome.
Cool. People know what they're doing this summer? Good. It's our favorite question to ask. You know, there's still stuff on Handshake if you don't know yet. Did everyone get this at this end yet or not yet? Yeah? Oh, thank you. Awesome. Great.
Did I sign it?
You know, it's just for the students.
Oh, yeah.
It's our way to keep track of participation and all that. So should I just start?
Yeah, I think we should just go ahead.
Because I've just got a few announcements and then that way others can trickle in, but that way we stay on time and get you out in time for dinner and all that. Okay, so I'm Amy McClashin and I work at the Center for Careers and Internships. And part of my job there, I don't advise students, part of my role is academic outreach. So what that means is I do things like this. I collaborate with academic departments to bring back alumni by major to tell the story of basically reinforcing that a liberal arts education can serve you no matter what your major. And you should pick your major by what you're interested in and what you're passionate about and what you're intellectually curious about, because you will succeed no matter what you choose. And so the idea is that we've got different alumni who have pursued different paths. What you'll hear is their stories about how they got there, and you'll find that very rarely is it linear. And that's, again, the whole idea. We're trying to like get you to be able to say, ah, okay, I see a way to get from here to there without having to stress about it. There are other ways we tell the story too. I just want to point this out, or give you access to other ways to get information. Have people seen these? these major guides. These are actually really helpful for like family when you go home at the holidays and people ask, what are you gonna do with a geology major if you're also majoring in art history or whatever? And the idea is that on the front is what's the major about, what are the learning outcomes? And then on the back are how do those learning outcomes actually translate into professional competencies that you could take with you no matter which direction, whether it's Wall Street, whether it's in the field, whether it's something completely different, as well as internships and jobs that geology majors have pursued. And it's just, again, another way of giving you ideas and examples and snapshots into what might work for you. The other thing I want to say about our alumni is, are people familiar with Mid to Mid? Let's see, one, that's good, but that's okay. And not many faculty do know. It's fairly new, but it's great that I saw as many head nods from students. So this is our faculty alumni network. So over 5,000 alumni are in this database, and you can search it just like you would search LinkedIn. It's kind of a cross between LinkedIn and Tinder, where it searches by algorithms and by your interest to match you with alumni who you might want to reach out to and consult with. And it could be about your experience here, it could be about your future, it could be about a particular industry and you want to find out what do you need to do to prepare. Sophomores are invited to actually create a mentoring relationship with alumni. And so it has all of those capabilities in there. So check out Mid to Mid, because that's another way to continue the conversation today. You're meeting with 4 alumni today, but there are probably dozens more geology alumni in there who are doing lots more and different kinds of things. So you can expand your conversation of what you start today. The other thing I want to mention is we have part of the field guides, as we call these, the field guide for geology students, is the alumni are available, I'll let Emily, are available for one-to-one chats tomorrow morning. So if you like something that you hear, if you want to continue a conversation, if you're interested in learning about that particular industry, anything, you just like what you hear, you want to, that's what the alumni are here for. So sign up for a one-to-one chat. Right now, they all have slots available. And I've got the sign-up sheets right here. You can, if for the ones who are on Zoom, we'll send you the Zoom link tonight or tomorrow morning. And for Robyn, she'll be at Kitchell House tomorrow, and you can meet with her there. I also want to say, just as, we've got different industries represented from the alumni here. Even if you're not a Chinese major or not, I don't know what ones we'll be doing next year, but we do about 7 or so. This year we did 9 of these field guides every year for different majors. And even if you don't think it's an area of study, whenever you see a poster for one, check out the website, because the bios might be, sorry for doing this with my mask, we're all not getting used to it anymore, are we?
Mhm.
The bios might show that there's actually someone you do want to talk with, and the one-to-one chats are open to anybody. The panel is open to anybody. You don't have to be that major to check it out. So for example, next week with Chinese, I'm not remembering what specific links they're doing, but I know that there are like 5 different alumni coming for Chinese next week, representing 5 different industries that have very little to do with languages. So just check our website, read the bios. If it's someone you're interested in, just sign up to meet with them. That's just another way that alumni, they're here for you. So I just want to reinforce that message. And the only other thing I'll say is I turn it over to Will to moderate, which is thanks for coming. And I think you'll learn that in some ways it's all about the major, and in other ways it has nothing to do with the major. And that's the takeaway, but we'll let the alumni tell their stories. I think that's it. Turn over to you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy.
Sure.
Thank you so much for your help setting this up.
Pleasure.
Thank you all for coming. It's so great to have you here. And thanks mostly to our panelists for joining us. We have 3 panelists with us by Zoom. Behind me are Chris Falcones, Emily Dawson and Cailey Condit. And to my right is Robyn Cook, who we're so glad to have here in person. And what we're going to do, rather than me attempting to introduce each of you, I'm just going to let you introduce yourselves. And what we'd love to hear is what year you graduated from Middlebury, of course, what you're doing now, where are you? And also, if you can add in some thoughts on how you got there. What was your path after graduation? We don't need a lot of details right out of the gate, but what was your approximate path? You know, what intermediate jobs did you have? What pivot points or twists in the road did you have? And yeah, so if we can do that, why don't we start with Chris? We'll go then to Emily, Cailey, and come back to Robyn. Hi, Chris.
Sure. Hey, hi, everybody. Yeah, my name is Chris Falcones. I graduated in 2014. And yep, was a geology major. While I was a geology major, what kind of led me onto my path. So currently I work at Esri, ESRI. So we make like the ArcGIS software. I've been at Esri about 4 years now on the engineering side of things. And what sort of led me on this path and like career within GIS, so right, Geographic Information Systems, is while I was a geology major, a junior, I took GIS just like as one of the courses that kind of overlapped with our major. And you know, after taking like my first GIS class, I realized, okay, I really like the applications here. And going into my senior year, when I was lucky enough to work with Pete on my thesis, and we sort of designed it in a way where I had about a third of it, or like a good portion of it, have a GIS component. You know, having the interest after taking the class and realizing, okay, there's a lot of application. You know, I originally set out to pursue it specifically within geology, and it eventually, so it didn't go that way, you know, down the path. You know, it's not necessarily a straight shot how I got to Esri, but that's sort of how I got introduced into the GIS world. And essentially, while I was at Middlebury, I did this business program and got hired at Booz Allen Hamilton as a geospatial engineer. And at first, I was within this environmental compliance team that worked with the U.S. military. So started with like the United States Marine Corps and the Navy, and was doing environmental compliance work using GIS as a tool, but using my geology knowledge. So what I focused on my thesis while a geology major, while at Middlebury, was soil formations. And so there was like a lot of overlap there with like a lot of like the subject matter expertise, as well as the technical abilities of being of using GIS for analysis. But eventually, as I honed my GIS skills more and more, and that, you know, I became a lot more technical on that end. The environmental compliance work, I mean, while there was still some environmental work available, just because of the matter of like the company I was at and the timing of when I was there, we just needed a lot more people with this capability within more intelligence work. And so I shifted more working with like the intelligence side of things, so like Department of Homeland Security and NGA, so the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And that sort of took me down a different path where, you know, I applied my GIS expertise, but the geology component sort of fizzled out just a little bit. And then about 4 years ago, decided to pivot, right? Because no background in military work, didn't even necessarily have an interest, but I saw it as an opportunity to get those technical skills really sharpened, to set myself up and become a resource where, you know, my abilities to use GIS on the analytical side of things, you know, sort of became valuable across, you know, interdisciplinary components. And then eventually decided to like switch over to the engineering side. And then getting on that path, there was, you know, this also wasn't a straight line, but I realized, okay, like I really enjoyed it and did have a passion for like just geospatial work overall. And there was a lot of like self-taught engineering and just like more like getting more under the hood of things. And so now as a platform configuration engineer, platform engineer, I work with our customers and have pivoted in like the last year and a half or so. It just opened a lot more doors, the more expertise I built on it. So now like I'm sort of the master of my own universe and path where I decided to move over to more strategic market work. And with that, for instance, I am coming back sort of into some environmental climate change work with the city of New York, and it's more on the side of it's like custom engineering where we have our GIS online platforms, and so I'll create like custom applications or customize our already built applications to fit for the workflow for the analysts who are doing the analysis of like whatever environmental or climate change, or some of my other projects, like miscellaneous projects have been like Department of Buildings and such, the US federal courts. But essentially my path was, I saw the advantages of this like technical skill, learned it as well as I could on the analysis side. And, when I decided, okay, I want to be able to apply it more in like the subject matters that I'm interested in, I just went ahead and sharpened my skills, on the other side of it, which is the engineering side, and was just able to choose, like while at Esri, there's a lot of freedom if you show this expertise to sort of choose your projects, and figure out exactly where you want to apply, those abilities. So yeah, this 8-year-long path has been, as Will mentioned, definitely not a straight line, a lot of pivot points, but I think the skills that I learned being a geology major, like, I definitely highlighted, especially in my job interviews, even on the analyst side of things was, showing that, I worked on a year-long thesis and showing like the intricacies of that and what it takes to be on a project that's going to last a year long, and coming out the other end, having consolidated all these smaller parts and, and those are definitely the skill sets that you learn, in a liberal arts, having a liberal arts path is being a problem solver, being a critical thinker, and then, the technical skill, also really helped along my path.
Awesome, thanks, Chris. Can we go next to Emily? Hi.
Sure. Hi, everyone. And yeah, thanks for having me. I wish I could be there in person. All right. So I was a Feb. I'll start with that. 08.5. I feel like that's very important to mention. Now, 08.5, I was a geology major and also majored in studio art because I figured if you go to a liberal arts college, why not? And I'll share a little bit about my path from Middlebury, but currently I am at Deloitte Consulting. I would say I took a pretty unusual path to get to like a big consulting firm. So I hope this provides some encouragement, or I don't know what, to those of you who are thinking about consulting, because I know a lot of my peers and people with whom I currently work, they were like recruited out of some big university and they went straight in as an analyst and they kind of have grown up in the firm, and it can feel very intimidating. And I remember for years feeling very intimidated by, people I knew, peers that were at, Deloitte or whatever. So after graduating, my first job was a research assistant actually for a physician in Boston. And for that, I was really building off of my knowledge of how to do research, my interests, my intellectual curiosity, and figuring things out and looking things up. Obviously my thesis, and I also spent a summer up at Mid running the lab for Pat Manley, just keeping the research going. So, and like being out on the boat with Tom, like those sorts of things were very different than academic medical research, but of course there are a lot of overlaps in sort of the skill sets and the aptitudes. So I was doing that for a little while, and kind of in that science vein, also toying with the idea of, maybe med school was something I might be interested in. But I realized that I didn't want to do that, although I did end up marrying a now doctor. So got my medical first, who is a Middlebury grad, I should say. So anyways, after that, I ended up going to grad school, and I, pivoted from my 4 years in Middlebury, Vermont, and went to New York City, which felt really different and really scary, but I would say is one of the biggest growth opportunities for me in sort of my professional growth, my personal growth, all that. So I did my master's degree at the Earth Institute in Sustainability Management. It is a very interdisciplinary program that combines, their focus is like some public policy, some science, and it allows you to really customize what your focus is. So for me, I was able to take classes at the law school, at the School of International Public Affairs. I was able to take like hardcore, climate science classes and TA at that level, which was really, really good, I think, for exposure and learning skills. And through that experience, part of the graduate degree was a capstone. And it's kind of like a thesis, but instead of, doing all this research and like producing some physical thing that you're going to present, you have like a miniature consulting project for a real client, and you work together in student teams. I think there were maybe 10 of us with an advisor, and we had a real project. And so for me, my project was looking at the coastal resilience of a few beach parks in the city of Stamford, Connecticut. Which, I was able to choose that capstone workshop. They range from all different things, all different clients, but for me, that was of big interest. And so I was exposed to things like flood maps and, some of the things you were talking about, Chris, like depth grids and like hydraulic and hydraulic modeling and engineering, things that were really not on my radar and were not really part of my my schooling or my education thus far. And it was really fascinating to me. I also was in the city of New York when Sandy hit, which was a really big event for New York. And it completely changed the landscape of what people were thinking about, how people were talking about, climate change, sea level rise, investments, like priorities for the future. So I felt really lucky to have, obviously that was a huge catastrophic event in so many ways. The silver lining for me was that it really brought a bunch of attention, policy, and opportunity associated with coastal resilience and things like that. So all that to be said, this capstone workshop with the city of Stamford was really exciting. And I was exposed to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, has this whole program that maps the risk of natural hazards across the US. In the East, we are primarily focused on flooding from storms, from sea level rise, what have you. But across the country, there might be focused on wildfires, earthquakes, etc. So from that capstone workshop, I was able to kind of transition that into a paid internship with the city of Stamford, just doing some helping them basically implement what we suggested in our mini consulting project to the city. So that was really exciting too, to kind of see that go to fruition and be able to, talk to the mayor and present what we had come up with as a plan for what they might improve and where they could make investment. That led to a job at an engineering firm, but the bigger thing to highlight here is the project that I was working on for the engineering firm. So like Chris was saying, a lot of these firms or consulting agencies, they'll have projects for the government, state, local, federal clients. And so for me, the project was with FEMA, and it was on this program that maps the risk of hazards. So it was really cool because I got to, not directly related to geology per se, but it's tied together for sure. And I was able to kind of follow this common thread to, I would say, my first like real job, in the field that I was hoping to be in. And then that, I would say maybe different from some of the other panelists' path, and I'll be curious to hear, but I feel like I kind of went for a little while where I was like specializing. And then I had a pretty big pivot last summer where now I'm kind of broadening. And I have moved away from doing client-focused work at Deloitte, and now I'm doing internal work for the firm where it's much more of a business focus. Like we're trying to optimize basically like how the firm works, because it's not very exciting, but it's basically like we have a whole audit business, we have a whole consulting business, we have a whole tax business, we have a whole advisory business, and they're going to butt heads at times. And so we try to optimize and kind of like get everyone together and optimize and like fill in the Tetris board the way that makes the most sense. Not at all related to this, but I share that because I think a lot of times, and I didn't realize this, but a lot of times we're kind of going down this path of like, okay, what's next? What am I interested in? How is it going to kind of set me up? But I think like the more doors you open, the farther along you get, then you also have more options. So like for me, I have 2 little kids, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old. Like I said, my partner is in medicine. He was a biology guy at mid, but he is in his like, year 8 of 9 in medical training. So he's like just almost about to have his first job, real job. And for me, it didn't make sense, like kind of what I was doing. I was working a lot of hours and it wasn't making sense. So anyways, it's a different point in life, I'm sure, than most of you are at. But I share that because it's nice to know that even if you kind of go down this path, you're going to have options in the future. So, all right, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was so helpful and wonderful. Cailey, do you want to take a turn?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Cailey Condit. I was class of 2011 at Middlebury, and I was a geology major. I was a minor in math, and I also took a lot of art history classes. So really leaning into all of the liberal arts of everything at Middlebury, which I totally value. I also ran cross country and track when I was at Middlebury. So I ran cross country, indoor and outdoor track, and that was a really big part of my life when I was a student there. And I still run today, although definitely not near as fast as I used to. So when I graduated from Middlebury, I knew that I was really interested in staying in research. I did my senior thesis with Dave West, working on hard rock geology and tectonics, and I really loved that. So I moved out to Colorado and started a PhD at the University of Colorado. I actually started as a master's student, and the summer before I started my master's, I worked as an intern at the USGS, and my mentor at the USGS said, "Do you think you want to get a PhD?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "Well, just do it. Don't like waste time on getting a master's if you know you want a PhD." And so I was lucky enough to be able to talk to my master's advisor and see if he wanted a PhD student, which he did. And so I ended up, even just in that first semester, switching over to a PhD, which worked out really well. So I was at the University of Colorado for 6 years. I lived in Boulder, Colorado, which is an awesome town. Highly recommend spending your 20s there if you are able to. It's a great place. Also got really into trail running there. But I was working on my dissertation research, was very focused on similar stuff to what I worked on at Middlebury. So I was working on metamorphism and deformation in the deepest parts of the continental crust during a continental collision. And these rocks are exhumed now at the surface in southwestern Montana, so between Bozeman and Yellowstone. And I did a ton of backcountry fieldwork, which I really enjoyed. Lots of mapping, collecting of samples. I did a bunch of geochronology, a bunch of petrology and structural analysis. So I was really focused on sort of what are the processes that happen in the deeper parts of the continental crust when continents collide. which I love. I love that stuff. I am a petrologist and a structural geologist to this day. But as I was finishing my PhD, I was thinking, okay, I think I want to stay in academia. I really love research. I like teaching a lot. I really love mentoring. I got to mentor a bunch of undergraduate students and other graduate students when I was at CU Boulder, and I loved it. But I finished my degree in 2017, and I was like going up to defend my PhD or finishing my PhD when the 2016 election happened, which personally for me was a really challenging time. And I felt sort of like, what am I doing? Like, why am I studying this thing that like matters to me and like 3 other people? Like, what is the point? You know, and I will say that like, right, we never know what part of science is going to end up being really important. Like you look at the vaccines and that mRNA vaccines, like a lot of that research happened for a really long time, in no way related to like saving millions of lives with a global pandemic, right? But I felt, you know, like I've developed the skill set. I love this. This work really fills me up. But like, how can I apply this in a way that feels more relevant to humans? And so what I realized is that all of these amazing scientific skills that I had built during my PhD could be applied to different tectonic settings and actually applied to working on seismicity. And so I did a pivot. So still staying in science, but I did a pivot to do a postdoc. So, you know, like being a researcher at Rice University, which is in Houston, Texas. And I was working on these slip behaviors that happen in subduction zones that are called slow earthquakes or slow slip. And they precede these large megathrust earthquakes. And we don't understand really anything about them. But we know that metamorphism and deformation are really important to produce these events. And so I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is actually like 3 steps closer to being societally relevant. So I started working on that, and it has opened up some huge doors for me. I realized that working in subduction zone science is really exciting, right? Like I should say, like right now, I didn't even say this, I'm an assistant professor at the University of Washington. So I live in Seattle. I live right on top of the Cascadia subduction zone, which has not had a large megathrust earthquake since 1700. So we are about due. Which definitely keeps me up at night sometimes. But I have like really loved working in subduction zones. I'm using all of the skills that I developed during my PhD, but I'm applying them to things that feel both scientifically really exciting and societally relevant, because I'm working on how we understand what may lead to these large earthquakes, like the one we had in Tohoku or Sumatra, or these large magnitude 9 earthquakes that are so destructive and tsunami-agenic. So after I did my postdoc at Rice, I was there for a year and actually lived in Houston during Hurricane Harvey, which is like a whole other story if you want to talk about like crazy events. But then I did a postdoc at MIT. So I was at MIT for a year and a half. And there I did another sort of scientific pivot where, you know, I've always worked on naturally deformed rocks. So that sounds weird, but like rocks that the earth actually deformed at high pressures and temperatures. And I wanted to understand how strong these rocks actually were when they were deforming. So I did a postdoc at MIT where I was working in a deformation laboratory where we have these giant rigs that can take little pieces of rock up to the temperatures and pressures that the rocks experience in the lower parts of the Earth's crust and exert differential stresses on them and then see how strong they are. So I did these deformation experiments, which has also opened up a huge realm of sort of this rheology side of the work that I do, which is really trying to figure out how strong the Earth's crust is during deformation. And that is like allowing me to do a lot of really dynamic stuff with the rock record stuff that I work on, but is directly related to these earthquakes as well. And I've been at the University of Washington since 2020. I started here right before the pandemic. So I have also been spending a lot of time in my living room with my dog on Zoom, as I'm sure many of you did at various times during the pandemic. But I would say that if you're interested in academia, I'm happy to talk to any of you. It is definitely a challenging path, but I will say that I am so happy and I love my job so much. And I'm happy to talk to you all about what, I do in terms of my research, but also teaching, because I teach classes now all the time, and I mentor graduate students and undergraduates in research right now. So in like tectonics. So yeah, that's me.
Nice. Thanks, Cailey, so much. That was great. So yeah, we'll finish up with our in-person panelist, Robyn Cook.
Hi, I guess I'm the oldest one here. I'm class of 2002. So I've got my 20th reunion coming up in a couple months. And I'm currently a senior hydrogeologist at a small consulting firm in Portland, Oregon. I think my pivot happened my sophomore year because I came in full steam ahead pre-med, and then J term of sophomore year, I was in Costa Rica with Pete and Helen, and sort of dreading going back to organic chemistry, and decided, well, geology is a lot more fun. I think I'm just going to stick with geology instead. But I didn't know what geologists did. So I went through the Career Center and found two geologists that lived in Portland. And I met up with them when I was home for a break. I grew up in Salem, Oregon. So one was Tom Pearson at the USGS, and I wound up doing my senior thesis with him. And the other was Walt Burt, who was working at CH2M Hill, which is a really big consulting firm that has since been bought up by a bigger consulting firm. And I shouted both of them for a day, and I was like, okay, this is some pretty cool stuff. I think I'll stick with geology. And stayed in touch with Walt, stayed in touch with Tom. Walt and two colleagues broke off from CH2M Hill and created groundwater solutions in 2000. And when I was home over summers and over breaks, I went in and interned with them. I did GIS, not nearly the kind of stuff that Chris does now. I can't even touch GIS anymore. And do cross sections, and got to be on some field sites doing drilling for municipal production wells. And I really, really enjoyed that work. So I stuck around for a 5th year at Middlebury because my now husband was a year behind me. And I did research with Pete, and I waited tables at this brand new restaurant in town called Two Brothers. Still around. And applied to grad school with the focus I thought was going to be more geomorphology and rivers. And I was really passionate about cleaning up the world and cleaning up the rivers. But my work with GSI made me a little more interested in groundwater. So I sort of structured my course load to be more around groundwater and wells. I took a water law class through the law school at University of Montana. And that was also interesting to me. And my now husband was with me in Montana, and he came back to Massachusetts to start med school. I also married one of those Middlebury physicians. But I knew about the job in Portland, and I wasn't seeing any opportunities like that in the Northeast. And so I decided to stay in Portland and work for GSI, and he was in med school in Massachusetts. Did that for a couple of years and decided that was dumb. So I moved back up to Massachusetts to be with him and joined a larger environmental consulting firm. So where I'd been doing clean water work in Portland, water supply wells, a little bit of water rights, but mostly wells, and I'll get into the water rights later. The firm in Massachusetts, I was focused more on site investigation and environmental remediation, doing a lot of redevelopment of sites that had been contaminated. So working in the dirty water world. And I'm glad that I had that opportunity, but it also made me realize that I like the clean water world a lot more. So I had my first kid and decided to stay home with him because Mike was almost done with med school. We were going to move back to the Northwest pretty soon. Anyway, so I stayed home with my firstborn for a couple of years. We relocated to the Pacific Northwest, and I stayed in touch with Walt all during this time. And I would visit them when I was home for Christmas, and they were slammed with work. And I said, please, will you come and work for us? I'm like, okay, just a little bit. So I was an on-call employee, maybe 10 hours a week, had another kid, stayed very low key, 10 or so hours a week, and then slowly ramped up as my kids have grown. And I'm still working 24 hours a week, but most weeks it's more than that because we're really, really busy right now. And the projects that I work on and manage are, helping anyone from a little vineyard or a farmer who needs a new water right or a new well to a large municipality or an industrial client, or I have an ag client who has somewhere in the realm of 9,000 acres of fields that he's irrigating, and I'm helping him with his water rights. So I get to do a variety of projects, variety of budgets, variety of timelines. I have a client that I've been working on this really cool project I can talk about later for like 3 years. We're trying to implement a storage project to help enhance stream flow. So I did get to do some river work eventually. But yeah, it's a small firm, we're about 70 employees, and we're pretty niche in our market for doing groundwater work in the Northwest. That's me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Robyn. Thanks, everybody. I find it so wonderful and moving to hear these stories. I just love hearing how lives play out. You know, it's just, it fascinates me so much. So, but I think we'll transition, kind of hearing, you know, having a baseline for everybody. I would ask the question that I've always wanted to know the answer to and still don't know, which is, after you graduate from Middlebury, you get your various jobs in your career, looking back, what skills did you take from Middlebury that actually helped you? And it's okay to say none. That's not what we're looking for, but that is okay. And you know, what skills did you, looking back, you know, what skills have been the most helpful to you? And also, I was thinking about Chris a little bit in thinking, if you want to say something about how you acquired new skills as well, you know, so took some from Middlebury, maybe acquired some new ones. How did you do that? Why don't we just let you guys weigh in on that? I guess I don't know if you guys have a way to raise your hands, but I guess you could do it physically. Yeah. Anybody want to go first?
I'll go because I'm right here.
Great.
I think everybody sort of touched on it a little bit, you know, the creative thinking and the problem solving. And in consulting, that's a lot of what we do. My company is called Groundwater Solutions. We look for answers to problems. And I think that really started in, you know, lab classes in geology, figuring out the what and the why and the how did this all happen, and how does it all come together. So I think the critical thinking, the sort of out of the box thinking, because a lot of times in our line of work, there isn't just one answer to things, and we have to figure out, oh, this isn't going to work because of this diameter is not going to work. What else can we do? So there's the out of the box thinking. There's communication is really important, and I feel like working in labs and small groups of students, you get practice at communicating and bouncing ideas off of each other. Writing is also really important in what we do, and I learned a lot about the scientific writing process at Middlebury, and then really got better at that in graduate school. but it started here. Let you guys jump in.
I'll build off of Robyn's. I feel like some of those sort of hard skills, I'll say on the other end, maybe the softer skills that I feel like a lot are just like the culture of Middlebury. I feel like, I don't know, it helped me to, you know, talk about critical thinking. It helped me to kind of figure out like what to pay attention to. And that helped me to figure out, you know, how to make meaning of what's going on around me and how to craft my values, like what mattered, what was my priorities, you know, what were my goals, what was my mission. I think the environment at Middlebury in the geology department is a really, you guys all know this by now, like a very special place. It is very unique. It's a certain type of folks who decide to major in geology. There aren't that many of us typically. We spend a ton of time outdoors. Like there are a lot of kind of factors, but I feel like for some of the softer skills, Middlebury really helped me to figure out what was important to me and like focus on pursuing that. I think it also gave me, you know, again, Middlebury I would say is like a little quirky sometimes when you compare it to like the broader population. Vermont's a little quirky, and it kind of made me feel like get comfortable in my own skin and not following the crowd and doing what everyone else was doing. And I don't know if I can say, maybe this is like PC to say, but like being an econ major and just like, you know, Amy, I think you mentioned earlier, like going to Wall Street or something, you know, it made me feel comfortable doing something that was maybe a little different. So I think that's really hugely important. That's carried through my life. And then the other thing I will say is on the communication piece, Robyn, building off that, like, I feel like Middlebury really emphasized the importance of being able to communicate well, whether it's verbally or in writing. And that is, it's not something that I fully understood, you know, in our like freshman seminar or whatever it was at the time, but it is so important and it matters so much in like everything that I've done since Middlebury.
I can go next. I obviously use a lot of the hard skills that I learned as a geology major as a professor in geology. So I obviously use those, but I would say that the biggest thing that I really got from Middlebury is the ability to critically think and to write. And the amount of writing that I did compared to many of my peers in graduate school was way more. Like, I came in with a really strong background in writing, not just scientifically, but in general. And so that was a huge, huge, huge benefit. And the reason why I think I'm successful today, because if you can't write, no matter what you're doing, if you're a professor or anything, that's such a fundamental way that we have to all communicate and make you successful. So I am so thankful that I got that both in the geology major and the rest of the courses that I took at Middlebury.
Yeah, I'll add on. Yeah, the critical thinking and writing for me as well.
Hey, Chris, we're not hearing you very well. I don't know if you're using a different mic maybe, or.
Can you hear me? And one thing that I got.
Yeah, we still don't hear you very well. Maybe we've lost Chris.
All right, how about there? Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go.
There we
Great.
go.
I think,
Yay.
sorry, I think my headset's died, so I had to switch over. But yeah, totally to the same effect. I think you know, critical thinking and writing, you know, everything that was listed, I think you know, if you see them as these skills that you can leverage later on, you know, you'll realize that you're using those skills and sharpening them across your classes at mid, you know, in other departments as well as the geology department. And then in terms of like a technical skill, you know, I mentioned that I ended up taking a GIS course that introduced me to the world of, you know, like just like geospatial analysis. And, you know, I ran with that. And so I do recommend that, like, if, you know, if you have some slight interest or even just like want to see what it is at the introductory level, you know, I do recommend that you give it a try. You know, one semester, you maybe have like a free slot or something. Just, you know, take the class or take a GIS class and, you know, see sort of like, you know, what else this really big subject has to offer, right? Because if you do decide that, you know, that you'll take a geology path, you know, it is a very helpful tool down the line, especially if you're doing like, you know, structural or superficial geology or anything along those lines. And, you know, what really helped me too were like some of the other programs. So like after I took that one GIS course and I really liked the application and saw it, you know, being applied across multiple disciplines, I did an internship that very next summer after my junior year through Middlebury with a professor, and worked with the town of Cornwall with like their natural resource conservatory, I believe it's called, and did some GIS consulting for them. So I did a huge like GIS project essentially, but it was for the town government. And after a little over a year of doing that, you know, I presented my findings, and you know, it was sort of my introduction to government consulting, like using GIS. But yeah, like, you know, there are some technical skills there that you can also learn and get introduced to. And then, you know, if you find an interest in it, you know, like you can always adapt and like add it on to your workload and your course load and the things that you are already interested in. And, you know, again, it'll just open more doors in that way. But that's a great technical skill that I'll definitely advocate for, you know, and it is something that I love, like, you know, 8 years down the line, still love doing it.
Great. Anyone want to weigh in on a lightning round about things that you wish you had learned at Middlebury? What was your biggest deficiency? Maybe quickly, or nothing is okay.
I can weigh in a little bit, and I think this may have changed since I graduated in 2011, but I had no exposure to coding at all when I was at Middlebury, and now I use Python and MATLAB all the time, and that's a really important part of what I do. I guess I use like a little bit of like ArcPy, like a tiny bit in one of the GIS classes I took, which also was very, very helpful for me. So I second what Chris has said, like take a GIS class, and they're actually just like really fun, but also super helpful. But yeah, I wish I had had more of the sort of the quantitative side of things, but my impression is that has evolved a lot since I graduated.
This isn't really answering your question, Will, but I hope I get a pass on it. So I wish I did a summer field school when I was a geology major. And I didn't understand until I did that is like a required component of many geology majors at like any large university. And Middlebury will pay for it, or at least they did at the time. Like there's a program, you can apply, it's a scholarship. So I wish that had been more broadcasted, that had been better understood, and it was more available to like all geology students, because it was just the best experience. I spent, I think it was like 8 weeks with, what was it? It's like I think it was Boise State University or something over in Sardinia, Italy, mapping and doing all these really cool things out in the field. So I wish that was, and maybe it is now, you know, like Cailey, to your point, it could have changed, but I wish that was more of a part of the narrative of the geology major.
Yeah, I sort of stumbled into my geology field mapping course when I studied abroad. I did the field mapping course in New Zealand, and otherwise I wouldn't have had a field camp for geology, but just about everyone else in grad school had done that. Similar to
Cailey?
sorry.
Yep.
We work with a lot of databases, and I know enough to know what a database looks like. And then I let somebody else do all of the internal stuff with it.
You could have used some more.
Yeah, a little more numerical, analytical.
Yeah.
You'll be happy to know there's an initiative called Mid-Data across the disciplines, so.
Chris, anything from you on that, or are you?
Yeah. Oh, could I didn't have my audio when you asked the question. What was?
Oh,
the
no problem. Yeah, the question was just, what didn't you learn that you wished you had? What?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So something that I hadn't mentioned before was, so when I first got to Middlebury, I was a computer science major, and was studying like Chinese and computer science. Switched over geology and Portuguese and film instead, which I am happy that I did. But yeah, with in terms of yeah, I guess like having the access to like the computer science department and like just sort of where I am with my career. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, even though I wasn't a computer science major anymore, I wish maybe I took a couple more of the classes. And I think like, you know, just like by the nature of like just how things kind of are evolving, you know, I think even just being familiar with some computer science, being a little bit familiar maybe with like how Python works, can just like really go a long way. You know, even if like you're not the one hands on keyboard writing any code or anything like that, you know, I in my experience, more and more I see that like, you know, even my like project managers just have an idea of what's going on so that they're able to like delegate, and, you know, other people on the team like can understand like just the bigger picture of a project. And it just, you know, it feels like, you know, as time goes by, we're kind of like leaning in that direction. And that's another area I would just recommend, like maybe just, and even if it's not like an actual class, because I know, you know, that's a big commitment, you know, like maybe a JSON course or, you know, or even just some self-research and like just be familiar, just sort of like how it works a little bit, like maybe, how it can be applied. And, I think just down the line on coding is just like kind of like this thing that's getting into like a lot of, fields. So.
So I'll paraphrase, follow your dreams, follow your passion, but maybe learn to code along the way.
Yes, yeah,
Now,
exactly.
sailing
Well,
around the
definitely,
world.
definitely follow your passions, because I love geology, and I was like, this is for sure what I'm going to study. But just like along the way, I was like, oh, maybe I'll like look a little bit into this or a little bit into that, but 100% follow what your passions are, what you're interested in. Agreed.
Yeah, and actually that's a decent segue into I think my final question. We have about maybe 8 or 10 minutes left. So I think I'll ask one more question and then we'll open it up for a Q&A to let the students ask questions. So I guess my final question is kind of a combination, which is, would you each be, interested in sharing some general advice for the students, as they enter into their career? And also, do you have any reflections on adversity that you've encountered, failures you've encountered, times when you had to persevere, so anything along those lines would be great. Robyn, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Well, I think my biggest piece of advice is you guys are already doing is get out there and talk to people who are in the field that you're interested in and see if it's something you want to continue doing, and maybe see if you can get an internship. I mean, that's really how I cemented the field that I wanted to be in, was actually seeing what people were doing and being able to learn on the job. It's an employee's market right now for a lot of firms. So getting in at an entry level is great. Trying out a job, maybe like, don't think this has to be my only career because maybe you don't like the culture or it's not exactly what you thought it would be, but an internship is a great way to sort of test something out and see if it's a good fit for you. So I recommend that. Challenges and failures is a really hard question to think about, but I think one of my biggest challenges is being a small, soft-spoken woman in a male-dominated field, especially working with contractors. And I'm out on drilling rigs with really big guys, and I have to tell them, you need to stop doing that and do something else. And I just had to learn to really be sure of myself and know that I know what's supposed to be happening here, and they're respectful. They're just really big. So that was a challenge for me. And another challenge has been finding a good work-life balance. I have little kids, and it's really important for me to be around them. And so I'm really lucky to have found a firm that has really good work-life balance, and people, impress on me that boundaries are important. And being able to work part-time has allowed me to do both, but it's a lot. So sometimes I feel like I'm failing at everything, and I'm not working enough, and I'm not a mom enough. And so that's been one of the biggest struggles for me.
Emily, do you want to go next?
Yes, and I just want to say, Robyn, I echo that. I hear you. You are doing a great job, but it is so hard to feel that way. And you're setting a great example for your kids. So, but yeah, it's big time. I think it's a lifelong struggle. Okay, so in terms of failures, I have a good one. My first job out of grad school, I think I mentioned, was like kind of a smallish engineering firm, and my job was to be like an outreach engagement stakeholder person for this FEMA program that maps the risk of hazards, right? Like very specific job. Somehow I decided that based on my connections at the city of Stamford for my previous internship, they want to pursue this grant. And I managed to convince, it's like a federal grant from DOI. And I managed to convince this brand new firm that I'm working for, but like it's my first job, that we should go in and try to like win this city as our client. So the city of Stamford's like, okay, great, we'll agree. Like they paid us to develop this whole grant application for them. It was this whole thing. I like devoted, I don't even know how many hours, like an embarrassing amount of time to this. And it was like, it wasn't even really what I was being paid to do. So I feel like I really put myself out there. I took a huge risk. I didn't even know the people I was working with. And lo and behold, like, obviously we didn't get awarded the grant. So then it was a huge bummer too for, you know, the city and these people that had like put their trust and confidence and taxpayer dollars like in me to go after this grant. And it would have been an awesome grant if they had won it. It would have been great, but they didn't. We didn't. So that was a bummer, but a good learning experience for many, many reasons. One of which is that it's okay. Like, I still had my job. Everyone still trusted me. People still wanted to work with me and hire me. So yeah, it made me feel a lot safer about like taking risks, raising my hand with an idea and kind of pursuing it, especially if you're going to like raise your hand, because often a lot of times you're going to raise your hand and then you're going to be the one to lead that, unless someone, unless there's like a voluntold situation. And then what was the other part was advice. So yeah, I think talking to people is super important. I remember when I was entering the job market, both post Middlebury, right out of undergrad, and then also, looking for jobs coming out of grad school, I had this little notebook, and I would like look online to see, firms, companies, people doing work that I might be interested in, and like write it down and try to see who I can get in touch with, or literally have like sit downs with my professors that I really liked in the classes, the subject matter that was really important to me, and talk to them about, who do they know, like what type of people are doing this work in the city. That I think is hugely important. And then the other thing I would say is just like, this is not my own advice. It was given to me, but I really live by it, is just trusting it's going to work out. And it will, even if it feels like, you're submitting your resume and applying to a bunch of jobs and you're not getting any bites, like it will work out. So having that faith, having that confidence in yourself, and I forget who said it earlier, I think it was Amy, but it's like, you invest in this Middlebury education and this liberal arts education, not just to come out with a major, but to come out as a competent human who can do a number of different things, who believes in yourself, and who, who's willing to kind of explore and take risks. So I would say trust that as well.
Great, Cailey, and then we'll wrap up with Chris.
Sure. So I would say my best advice in general for anyone is if you have access to mental health care, take care of your mental health in general, no matter what you do. Like, I just tell all my students, like, go get a therapist. Here are the therapy places. So like, no matter what you do, like, I highly recommend that in general. My advice specifically for academia, if you are interested in academia and in going into getting a master's degree or a PhD degree, is to be really thoughtful about the advisor that you choose to work with. And you'll have great guidance from the professors at Middlebury in terms of like good programs and good people, but make sure that you feel like you are going to have a good relationship with your advisor for those things, because that is such a huge, important relationship. And I've seen really brilliant, wonderful people have terrible experiences in graduate school because of the way their advisor treated them. And unfortunately, there are a lot of jabronis in academia that are still around that aren't super great to their students. So yeah, just be really thoughtful about that. And you can get information from both professors at Middlebury, because we all sort of know each other in the geosciences. But if you are applying to graduate school, email some of their current students and ask them, like, do you like working with this person? What is the experience here like? Because students will be honest with you and tell you that. So that's my advice there. In terms of challenges, I have really struggled a lot with imposter syndrome during my time in academia. And I have really worked hard to push against that and try to self-actualize myself as like a smart lady that does good science. which is why I say get a therapist, because that has been really helpful for me. So, but I would say that, you know, that's a challenge. And I think some of that comes from what, you know, we've talked about here a little bit, right? Like I am a woman in a male dominated field and in a strike, trying to make changes and work within a structure that is not built for people that aren't white men. So that is something that I have been struggling with and I'm pushing against. So that's definitely been a challenge.
Thanks, Cailey.
Yeah, so you know, just to mirror a little bit of something that was talked about is right, this investment that you're putting in yourself. And you know, with that, my advice is, you know, trust in the time and the work that you put into your craft and to your skills. So like my first big challenge was I wasn't even at Booz Allen Hamilton for a whole year yet. And, you know, I was put into like this environmental compliance part of the account. And I wanted to do geospatial work, which is, you know, what my interviews were about and what my like business card said. And, you know, I hadn't seen it. And, you know, I'm going on at that point, I was like maybe 6 months into the job. I got to do some cool stuff like work on site at the Pentagon and such, but I was like, this is just not really like the skills that I'm, you know, trying to keep building. And I had reached out to my manager, saw like some internal postings of some geospatial work available, a team that really needed exactly the skill sets that I had worked on, that I harnessed during my internship that, you know, lasted about a year. And then, you know, so I was kind of like at this crossroads where I asked my manager, and the only thing that she really highlighted out of my entire request was, hey, this is asking for 2+ years experience. And I was like, okay, I understand, like I'm only 6 months at this company, but I can do every single thing on this paper and I can do it well because I just did it for a year for a real, you know, a real government. And she kind of left me hanging and was like, I felt a little belittled in her response. She was like, hey, like, you know, once you put in more time, and like put a smiley face in the email. And it was just, you know, it was kind of like downing, but I just like kind of went back and I was like, hey, look, I have confidence in this. So I reached out to the team anyway. And, you know, they had me go in. I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, and I had to metro way out to Herndon, Virginia. Met with this team. Like this was the Department of Homeland Security team that ended up pivoting me into the intelligence realm. And, you know, they understood that, you know, this learning a technical skill, like sure, experience is important, and like, you know, overall, but, you know, if you know how to if you have the skill and you know how to do what's being asked, you know, like have confidence in that because you know how much time and effort and work you put into it. So when I went, you know, they had me do a case study, you know, they really grilled me on it just to make sure that I could do it, you know, and of course I could. And, you know, that actually resulted like 3 months later. So, you know, I'm like about to approach my 1-year anniversary at the company, and I got an early promotion to senior consultant. I got on the team with Department of Homeland Security. That led to me getting like my intelligence clearances and such. And, you know, if I had listened and just thought, okay, sure, I'm brand new, I should just listen, you know, to this manager, you know, I have no idea where I'd be now, but it wouldn't be where I'm at. And so definitely have some trust in the work that you've put in, you know, like you know exactly how hard you've worked. So make sure you follow that.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. Those were all so wonderful and touching. And yeah, I'd like to open up the floor to the students. Maybe we have 10 minutes left-ish, and just would love to hear questions from you guys. Gaston?
Yeah, so this is a question for Chris. Your career path sounds a lot like the career path I want to do, where go right into work, maybe get post-grad education, but that seems like it will be at least a few years away. So my question is, outside of like a school environment, how do you acquire new skills? How do you keep your skills sharp going forward?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so I think, it's I think there's a lot of like reflection that I did, just to kind of like map out, okay, where is it that I want to get to? And then I kind of like backtrack after that reflection, right? And I'm like, oh, all right, these skill sets are going to be very important. And for me personally, what I've done is like, honestly, like I start with like very simple Google searches of like, different skill sets that seem important, right? So like, in terms of like GIS, for instance, like, I saw that things were going in this direction to become SaaS programs, right? So like, mostly like web browsing, computing power, and like, like there of course is still use of like ArcGIS Pro and such with like some of the more complicated custom work that I do, but I saw that trend kind of happening, and I was like, okay, I need to kind of like get in front of this. And for me, it was like a lot of just like self-taught paths and stuff. And I figured out, okay, these are the key elements of like what ArcGIS Online is starting to do. So I'm going to go ahead and learn it. And like, in the beginning, especially like first starting off, like, I got to fund some of this myself. So I would just get like free trials, like really drill into the software. And then like, yeah, and then also looking at like whatever resources you have available to you, right? So like, while you're still at Middlebury, like try to like kind of think of like, yeah, what are those, what's that place you want to get to, and think of like what's the potential path, right? And then just like dedicate time to it. And it's I know it's a little hard because you're busy with like things that you are getting graded on, or like, let's say once you start working that you have to do for your job. But I think it's important to like set aside some time for also like your professional development, like on a personal level, and like say, okay, I'm going to dedicate like a couple Saturdays or a couple Sundays or whatever it is, to hone that skill.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Linda.
When you were deciding like whether or not you wanted to go to grad school or where you wanted to go to grad school, what were the things you thought about, like in terms of using that as a stepping stone for like your further career, and kind of like what was your thought process going into that?
I'll take a stab at this. Or sorry, was that directed to a specific person?
No, anyone.
For me, and I'm guessing this is going to be a pretty different answer, say like for Cailey, but for me, I wasn't certain that I wanted to do a PhD. So I was interested in, I love school, and I pretty much knew that I wanted to do some sort of grad school. And, going back to the comment earlier about how your professors, your advisors are really important in your life. So turns out, my even exposure to, say, the Earth Institute at Columbia was like direct result of Pat and Tom Manley. I'd heard about their experience there and how great it was and all this stuff. So that was on my radar, like solely because of those individuals and my relationship with them. But for me, it was really trying to figure out, okay, I know that I'm interested in pursuing more school, but I wasn't really ready to like totally narrow my focus. So I think a lot of grad school is sort of a narrowing of the focus. And so for me, looking at a program at like the Earth Institute, that's kind of like a multidisciplinary program, you have that flexibility to get exposure to different things, but then you can also specialize within that. Like you can specialize in a climate science track or public policy track. So I think, when you're looking at your next step, like I would say keep an open mind to those types of programs too, that aren't just strictly, master's to PhD track. Yeah, I guess the one other thing I'll add to that is because I did have sort of consulting on my radar, but again, I wasn't like committed to it, and I had no idea I had no idea what I really wanted to do. So I was hoping to find something that was going to give me exposure and open doors.
And my focus, especially after a lot of PhD classes, was really environmentally focused. So I was looking at programs snow sciences and climate sciences and river restoration. And I did what Cailey did. I talked to advisors and looked for people who had programs and specific research interests that aligned with what I was looking at. And wound up following Pete's path and went to University of Montana because there was a really good group of professors there working on both river restoration and groundwater.
I can just
Cailey-
say that, yeah, I can just say quickly, if you're not sure exactly what you want to do, but you have a lot of things you're interested in, I do think a master's is a great choice. And you can always have that experience and then decide if you really love it to go on to a PhD. And I will say, as someone who accepts PhD students that apply to work with me that have masters, I'm super excited about because they have already come in with really robust training already. So if you're not sure, you can do a master's and you can switch fields completely from your master's to a PhD. So you shouldn't feel like what you do your degree in, if you do a master's, is necessarily binding you to a specific field. So there's like less pressure maybe there.
Great. Any final questions from the audience? Yeah, this has been so wonderful. I'll just quickly remind everybody that you can sign up for one-on-one meetings with Chris, Robyn, or Cailey tomorrow morning. I think there's a
And
variety.
Emily is on mid to mid, so you can also reach out to her that way.
Yeah, I think Robyn's not going anywhere.
Right.
So she's here for a minute if you want to speak with her. And I'm guessing that all three of our online panelists are also glad to have you reach out by email or ideally through the meetings as well. But I just want to thank you guys all so much for taking the time to be here with us. And
You can see, but there are lots of heads nodding.
no, it's just great to connect across the generations here and across the years, and means a lot. So thank you again for being here. Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah.
You know, good luck, everyone.
Don't wait to sign up for the one-to-ones.
Yeah.
And for you three online, my colleague Rachel will reach out to you with your schedules. And Emily, thank you. I'm sure we will reach out.
Okay, all right, thanks everyone, have a great one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, Pete. Gives me hope. Not you. No, some- yeah.
Well,
We're working on built practice. So we're gonna get you by your time. Right now, it's 6:45. All good. No worries. All right.
Chris is only available.
Cool.
I never get bored of these.
Yeah.
Ah.
Very quick. I was wondering about, you're talking about big data. I've never heard of that.
Oh, it's just an initiative. The faculty are trying to bring data across the district. So it's a faculty pedagogical initiative. So, for example, there's a JH course.
Also, no worries. I thought we had to spot. No worries. We're gonna walk it.
okay, that's. There's a Thank you. It was probably like something you might want to.
And USGS.
Probably
a big enough. I remember shouting. Oh, that's.
We're going to dinner with Robyn. Either of you guys want to join Shane? You're welcome. We're gonna go grab dinner at Survival.
Yeah, it's cool, it's good stuff, I know,
Yeah.
sorry you're leaving.
That Shane's on Survival. But he was around.
Let's see.
It's actually horrible. Just, I put my back down in the dining hall at dinner last night and I ordered like.
Yeah, well, I think that's